Welcome to Frankly Development. I'm your host, Frank. Today, let's talk about a crucial aspect of coding: exceptions. What we do when something goes wrong. You probably learned all about how to catch exceptions and handle them, but I'll give you 5 reasons why you should not catch an exception at all. Thanks for joining me on this coding quest at Frankly Development. If you want to support what we're building here, hit that subscribe button down below. You'll be part of this incredible community exploring the endless possibilities of coding together. And a big shout out to everyone who's already subscribed. Your support makes this an epic journey. Don't forget to drop a like. It's like giving a power up to the content you love. And thanks for being awesome and supporting the channel. Now, let's dive into today's coding adventure. Let's take a look at this example. Here we can see there's a random number being generated as an index. And in this generate weather forecast method, it seems to use that index. And apparently, something might go wrong and an index out of range exception might come out of that. So it's catched, it's logged, at least to console, and then the resulting status code is 500. Let's take a look at how this looks like in action. When we call the endpoint directly here, we can see that it returns the 500 error code and a response body that includes this nice little message that was specifically written in the exception handling. Now let's take a second look at the code. What about today's topic? Let's just not catch the exception at all. At least the code is a lot simpler already. Let's try running it again. And as you can see, the result is still 500. There are a few important differences between these two program variants though. The second one is much smaller and simpler, which is a really good thing. And logging was improved as well, now including the full stack trace, making debugging easier later on. And finally, the response body was changed. You may argue that we should not expose the stack trace in our result. Valid point, but keep in mind that you must configure this for all exceptions, not only for this individual index out of range exception. Let's take a look at this variation of the program. As you can see, it's almost as before. Now the index generation is in some different method, and apparently it might go wrong and throw an exception for some reason. Now here, you can notice is that the flow of this program is really troubled by this exception. Normally you would expect it to flow straight down across each call, and with the exception it's getting much more complicated. Here we have another variant of the generate index method. As you can see, in some cases it generates an invalid index, but it's throwing the exception to give us information about this, to give us the reason of what is going wrong. Now imagine the exception being caught and maybe we had some logging to it. That should save the day, right? Not quite. Catching that exception might have spared our program from crashing, but it also conceals a deeper issue. By silencing the exception, we missed the red flag, our code actually generating a negative index. When you catch exceptions without addressing the root cause, you're sweeping potential problems under the rug, making it harder to spot and fix them. So remember, sometimes catching exceptions can hide lurking issues rather than revealing them. Again, a variation of our previous program. As you can see now, the exception from the bad index is being caught, and then we continue with a 0 index all the time. In this scenario, we catch that exception and continue the program's flow. The other option will be to let the exception propagate, halting the program at that very point. failing fast. It's about stopping right where the problem occurs, ensuring we notice it immediately. Catching exceptions, while seemingly helpful, might mask a critical issue. By catching and continuing instead of failing fast, we risk the program's integrity. These weather forecasts will probably not be as we intended them to be. In the case where we allow an exception to propagate, the program halts and the request fails, drawing our attention precisely to where the problem lies. Sometimes catching exceptions might hinder our ability to fail fast and address problems swiftly. Instead, we will fail later in a less obvious way, making everything so much harder. Yet another variation, yet another problem. You can see how in Generate Index there is a potential problem with the random number generation, and we catch the exception. We log it, we make sure it's covered, and we throw it again, and in the controller get method, where it's been called, we again know something could go wrong, so we catch the exception to make sure we handle things correctly here as well. Of course, when we catch an exception, we log it again. Now you can see there's a lot of duplication, redundancy going on here. So there we are. 5 good reasons why you may not want to catch an exception. 1. We may not have a viable solution for the problem, and instead just complicate matters. 2. Catching the exception may break the flow of the program, introducing unnecessary complexity. 3. We may unintentionally hide information about the issue, thus making our own life harder. 4. We want to fail fast normally, but catching exceptions may lead to later, more costly work. And 5. All of that exception catching can easily lead to annoying redundancies. In conclusion, handling exceptions is crucial, but it's equally important to do it smartly. So double check your error handling strategy to make sure you know the right places to catch exceptions. I hope you enjoyed this episode and learned a thing or two about exceptions. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more insights and coding adventures. If you know even more reasons for not catching exceptions, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching and see you again next time. Until then, have fun developing.